Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning. Good morning.
We're going a long way today, as we always do in all of our podcasts, but physically we're like traveling
Yes.
across the globe for our beautiful guest this morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our morning, her evening, and it's
Yeah,
a real honor to sit with her. We can't wait to introduce her. We're just going to jump straight in because we have the
we
most
are.
beautiful time
Opportunity.
ahead of us. Yeah.
hmm
Thank you.
So our lovely guest today is Dr. Sharnael. She didn't always know the language of miracles. Years ago, when she was focused solely on ministry,
Mm.
she was faced with serious health challenges. Doctors after doctor, prescription after prescription, and soon she was on a suitcase full of medications that came with myriad side effects and no improved quality of life. At the recommendation of a friend, she visited a new doctor who focused on her mind, her life, her beliefs, and the energy of this,
Mm.
not just the stats on a chart. In that office, she had a silent epiphany. I teach the blessing of God's love to so many, and I yet have no real love for myself. Oh.
Yeah. Yes.
This sparked a journey of divine truth, love, and conscious living like never
Mm.
before. Welcome, Dr. Sharnael. Thank you so much for giving us
Yes.
this time today.
Mm.
Well, I'm very, very thankful to be with you guys and all the way over there. I've actually visited a few times to your country and did a couple tours and
Oh,
I don't know exactly where are you guys
on
exactly?
the Gold Coast, or on the
In
East Coast.
Queensland.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
North of Sydney.
So
Sydney.
okay, well, we went to the Gold Coast and we've been to Sydney and we've been to Melbourne and just several different places. So beautiful, beautiful area in the
Yeah, it
Gold
is.
Coast for
Yeah.
sure. That's one of my favorite places.
Oh, that's amazing to hear that you have footprints here. I mean, we were just talking this morning and saying how blessed we are having such a beautiful backyard with the ocean
Mm.
and being able to, kind of meet her, in the mornings and yeah, have her be our little
Blessing for the
blessing pool.
day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But part of the whole thing about being able to reach people on the other side of the planet is just creating these amazing energy connections and
Mm.
sharing you today with all of our listeners is very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, really
Yes, it's
exciting.
going to be a good collab and a good cross-pollination, literally.
I like
Oh,
that.
I like that word. That's beautiful. So we're going to jump straight in and ask you the
Yes.
wonderful question of how did your awakening begin?
Oh gosh. I think it's been like an ongoing process. I mean, like every little trip, every little person, every little illness, there's so many catalysts that have brought more and more and more opportunities to like kind of look behind the curtain and see, is there any more to this? Is there any more to this? Is what I'm thinking the right way to think, or should I change things up? Or maybe someone else has a different way of thinking that I've never looked at before. And so I think with each choice and each year and each month and each sometimes week, as we continue to work on ourselves, then that's kind of where the energy exchange happens, with this torrid of constantly radiating and then also magnetizing. So having this in out kind of
Mm.
breath and, life literally of, just existence. And, we get to meet other people and then we transfer and there's an exchange of energy and then that changes the field a little bit and then we get a little more and we get a little more and what we focus on we just keep making room for. And so yeah, I mean there's been tragedy that's been a catalyst, there's been big moves that's been a catalyst, there have been human beings that have come into my life that have caused me to have the choice to think a different way. And some of them have been really bad choices with pretty painful results. And then some of them have been more glorious and fun and entertaining, just like you guys, I'm sure, and everyone who's watching here. That, I mean, that's what life is about. But I
Mm.
think some pivotal times were around 4 or 5, and then moving to Louisiana was such a big thing around 13. 2008 was a big shift for me, and then 2016 was another big shift. And I think the world is sort of in a pretty big shift right now. And so for those who had maybe pivoted or expanded or woke up, previous, I think we're all kind of holding hands with it, with everybody now, going like, it's okay, we're all right. And some people are holding our hands as we're going through our new veil, constantly just to change. And it's never ending journey of remembering.
Oh my God. Yeah,
That's 100%.
absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Now, I just want to go back to a couple of those moments you just mentioned. So, right from a young girl, like at the age of 5, were you open to like different things happening around you, or were you just like a normal kid, like all of us, just growing up in the family and going to school and doing all those things, or were you conscious of?
Were you the odd one out?
Yeah, were you the black
Wait,
sheep?
what?
Were you the odd one out?
Oh, yeah. I didn't really grow up in a church type setting, or maybe more of a spiritual or a nothing.
Yeah.
I lived on a farm um around the time when I think I was first waking up, and I lived with my grandparents, and my dad was overseas quite often. And it was just me and the air and the barn and the animals, and there wasn't anything, like my school was quite far away, like there wasn't people to play with or anything, so it was kind of like a lot of me being by myself and just being with my animals. And so that, to me, nature and thunder and lightning and animals and grass and the sky, there's so much code and all of that, and just that whole exchange.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we are returning more to that now. We're waking up more to how we need to return to more of that now. So now, moving on to when you were around 13, is this still on the farm, or did you make a big move? What was the shift that happened then?
Yeah, moving to Louisiana was quite a switch, because like I said, at 15 I had a pivotal experience where I thought I saw like a hologram or something of now who I now know as Jesus. And later at 13, well, when first grade, I finally knew who the guy was because someone had a statue picture of him. I'm like, oh, that looks like the guy I saw. And then when moving to Louisiana, um, I don't know if you've ever been to Louisiana, but especially then, it was very churchy and very community, very, a lot of people read the Bible, and there was that kind of, just, they call it the Bible Belt here in the States. It's just
Okay.
a big area of like every few feet that you drive, there's another church building. So I was presenting a Bible for the first time, and just devoured these scriptures, because it was just like, oh, this is cool, and this is cool, and this is cool. And just not really knowing too much, but kind of jumped into their programs, and I was like, okay, well, I kind of always knew I would be in service in some way, but I didn't really know how that would walk out, and maybe this is an avenue for me. And then when it came time to go to college, the denomination that I was involved with was basically like, I wanted to major in religious ed, just because I wanted to keep studying and researching and looking into that spiritual side. And what really attracted me more than anything in this book was the supernatural and miracles and healings and things that were like, oh, oh, this guy bilocated, and this guy never died and just vanished, and this person got healed instantly, and this person, it took time, but all of these like powers that people had. And I'm like, how do you tap into that? I was just kind of made me excited to think that if they were doing it, then that's a blueprint for us. Like, why aren't we all doing it? And like, what's the equations to make that happen? And
Yeah.
yeah.
I love your mind straight
Yeah,
away. What's the equation?
I absolutely love the way you're talking in this space, because I can just feel you as this 15-year-old, the openness of your mind to seeing this book as a book full of scripture, but stories and magic and miracles, as you're saying, and not having bias, towards it, just having like complete openness to learning what it means, and obviously perhaps the printing of that Bible, because there's the New Testament, there's the Old Testament, all the things. Perhaps the one that you were given had that lightness and that that joy of what Jesus
really
has to share, what those stories have to share too. It's I love, and then that science mind going, well, why can't we all why can't we all disappear?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, I just was so curious, like what sets them apart from us? And, faith comes by hearing. And the more I kept hearing about these people doing these massive cool things, I'm like, we should all be doing this. Like, why are we not all doing this? And just really digging in deeper. It's like, well, maybe if I fast more or meditate more or eat a cleaner diet. And the answer is all of those things, is who you hang out with, what you're thinking about, what you're talking about, all, my
just so beautiful.
Are you
yes.
sure you're not a witch? I feel like you have a lot of witchiness.
No. Who knows?
That's the same thing as all the other things, isn't it? It's just a different label on the miracle that we all are in our spiritual
Yes.
soul.
Well, I mean, Joan of Arc was a witch, and she's my woman. I love her, so it's like, hey, whatever.
Yeah.
They tried to kill all the witches. They were all the good ones.
Yes, we know that.
They didn't win though. We disappeared for a while. We went and time traveled and came back in when we were able to.
Bigger and better and in your face.
Yes.
Love it. So we know that through some information that we've read about you, that you've had a lot of sickness through your life, a lot of illness. Let's not call it sickness, illness through your life. Was that in the younger years? Was that how did that come about, and how did that transform you, or how did that interact into the awakening?
Yeah, for me, dealt with some stuff as a kid. I was like had some hearing issues and throat issues, constant, and would go to doctor. At one point, they were supposed to do a surgery, and I was so terrified to have this surgery because it was in my brain and my ear, it's like that close. And like I had all these phobias thinking like, what if they just barely miss? And I was learning sign language because I was told that I may not have my hearing. And I do remember being in my bunk bed. I was on the lower bunk in this bunk bed, and I had surgery the next day. And I remember just like crying and praying all night that there would be some sort of miracle. And I went to go the next morning, and they brought me in. And right before I was going into the surgery, they were going to bring me to the place where they would do the anesthesia or the shots in my legs, or just to put me out for the surgery. And there was another kid in there before me and their parents. And this kid, I don't remember if it was a female or a male, but screaming bloody murder. And I was not feeling so great already, but this was making it worse. And my mom was like, can we go somewhere else? Because she's like, this is not helping. And so they took me into this little room where they would do the hearing tests, put the head, they were like, oh, let's just do one more test just to keep, just to check in before we do the surgery. And we go in there, and they would put these headphones on, and they would put like little decimals of things to hear, and you would either raise your hand and say like, oh, because you're in a soundproof room. And like, anyway, my hearing was 100%. And they were like, wait, what? And then I looked in my throat, and it was like, they were like, we don't know what's going on, but you look good, so we're going to cancel the surgery. Probably these days they wouldn't have canceled the surgery. Probably these days they'd be like, we're doing this anyway because we get all kinds of money. But because I've had that multiple times where people were completely clean bill of health and they did the surgery anyway. But all that being said, that did something for my faith, to believe in even more in miracles for myself. I would say another catalyst, I was dealing with black mold for a while, and I was overseas doing some research on cancer and some other things, and in Ecuador, and we miscarried right before. So when I was there, the doctor, who's a friend of mine, started doing lab work, and he found out that I was dealing with black mold at the time, and if I had went home to the States, they'd probably treat it as chemo related resolution, which wouldn't have been my highest. And so I stayed there, and they did different things with, diet, a metabolic diet, and took away all the carbs and the sugar, and they were doing raindrop therapy and IVs and just a lot of frequency biohacking.
Yeah.
And I came home, and that was big for me because, again, it was looking at the natural things that are available to us to shift us from the inside and out. And then it definitely gave me just this whole new avenue of understanding, like, hey, the frequency and crystals and all of these things that God has given us, plants and aromatherapy, and you know if you look, you'll find the answers that you're looking for, and there's a lot out there besides what people have said. If you're really, really seeking, you're going to find the answers.
You're speaking just the magic of the truth really there, and this is, to hear you say that is so powerful, and what people need to trust more, because it is the truth, and it is the way that we can heal beyond our knowing. And like, I'm a practitioner and healer, and my business is in health and wellness, and with products that I make, and speak into this space a lot of inside and out. What our body is capable of if we have the right ingredients and the right frequency, as you just shared. It's just incredibly powerful. What we can achieve if we choose. Yeah. So to hear
Absolutely.
that pathway as opposed to chemo, and what your healing journey would have looked like in that path, are two different books, really, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot to unpack, and I think if people are open to remember and just realize that every step of everything, we're constantly creating, we're constantly regenerating, this torrid field that we have that radiates out, magnetizes back to us, and just to look for the signs and look for the guides and look for what's coming, because you'll get these little hints and breadcrumbs along the way, and you'll create these people that come in your path that have the resolutions or have some little hope or encouragement or direction for you, and when we're aware.
Absolutely. I love the fact that you're that's a huge awakening in itself, understanding and remembering that that we have so many wonderful things that are free at our fingertips, that hold this magnificent vibration and frequency that is enough to heal us and to support the awakening journey. But one of our questions actually on the podcast is, what have you decided to change? So I'm interested to know, when you became aware of this, did you just go home and start throwing bits and pieces out? Because if we look at it on a scale, there's so many things that we use in our world that are not benefiting us, that are not supporting us as a human on this planet. It's like it's actually doing the opposite. So what things do you become aware of that weren't supportive of your evolvement or your awakening, your spiritual journey?
That's such a great question. Thank you for asking that. Well, it's a lot of things, not only 3D, but 4D, 5D, emotionally, mentally, so physically, I did go through the house and get rid of candles and chemicals and cleaning supplies and things that I knew were going to be hormone disruptors and things that would change my biofield because even things like perfume and what have you, they've done studies where people will wear a perfume and that changes and disrupts the pheromones. And so people will attract the wrong mate. And then when they stop wearing the perfume, they're just like, what am I doing with this guy? And so there's,
Amanda,
yeah.
be wearing the right perfumes.
I wear essential oils.
Absolutely. That's so true. I love what you're saying. Let's keep going. This is beautiful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, even deodorants and fragrances and things like that will change the pheromones. And, we have a genetic, we do pick and or create the field to allow people to come in and out and, what we're thinking about, what we're talking about, what we're feeling. There's a radiation from our cells and our organs that go out. There's our genetics from our ancestral, and that whole heritage of radiation. But yeah, and so there were the physical things as far as like chemicals and, maybe not eating bad vitamins or bad food, whatever good and bad is. But also there was this mental process of like really evaluating all the thoughts coming in and choosing if this a higher thought, is this a higher phrase, is this a higher belief system, where did the belief system come from, is it something that is going to bring fruit that's good, or is it going to create something that isn't serving me? So conscious language, and then when I started really looking and paying attention to my language, then I had to go back even further and be like, well, if I'm talking about it, then I'm either feeling it or I'm thinking it.
Yeah.
So that went into really looking into, well, what am I thinking about all the time? And are we on autopilot? And a lot of these thoughts that come are not even our own. I mean, there's technology out there where they literally put it in the air and people will pick up on the quote, the voice of God, and it's not the voice of God. It's manufactured, it's socially engineered, and not to mention all the subconscious commercials and things that are just kind of,
yeah.
So to come above all of those things, and to really go inward and ask, what is my God positioning system saying? My GPS, my actual, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, the God in you, and really listening to them small voices. And even though you don't know the end, what I see is sometimes if you just take off that first, like, let's say there's a Kleenex box, we don't know what's on the bottom, but you take the first one, another one pops up. Just keep on going and trust the process and trust, how you're feeling and all that.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Yeah. And I'm hearing the other thing too, just in amongst what you've, that beautiful information that you've just given there, is that even the good things, sometimes we really have to tune in. We have to tune in to see if that resonates with me. Because I mean, not everything, even the good things, sometimes the good things won't resonate with you, and it's about really tuning in and feeling, is this right for me? No, it's not right for me right now. And putting that to the side. I mean, we know there's a lot out there that we just know by looking at it or reading a label or something that it's not good for us. But this thing about the tuning in,
I love what you called the GPS, the God positioning system. That is dynamite.
Yes. And and just because something's good for me, doesn't mean it's good for you. I mean, and it could be good for everybody, but then maybe not good for you in this one season or this one day or this one time. So we as long as we are constantly tuning in to say like, well, what's right for me now, and now what's right for me now, and now and now and now and now and now and now and now.
I love that.
So I think again, this is coming back to like, or what the personal meaning of authenticity is, and the sovereignty, because it's, you can clump it as a static word, but it's not. It's actually a ever evolving process of what is my authenticity, what is my sovereignty, based on what you just shared around the Kleenex box and the tuning in. I mean, if I'm a sovereign being, am I just a static rock? No, I'm an ever changing, ever evolving element of being. Yeah, so I think that just that vision of the Kleenex box is going to stick.
Yeah. That was a
And the
beautiful
GPS.
visual, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So coming back to what you were sharing before around going into your spiritual studies, and was that still when you were in high school, or was that after you left high school? Because that
I was high school and college, and initially when I got out of school, I did not go into service. I always volunteered with ministry, through my community and my churches. But I didn't go into like full time, this is my job, being in service until 1999. And then I started doing conference speaking and church retreats and, women's retreats. And, I wrote books and kind of just started that traveling, teaching kind of situation. And I did that for 17 years and found myself sick again and had to reverse engineer that.
Yeah.
And doing that, I found even more things that were helping me understand more about balance and dove a little bit further into frequency regarding like crystals and biohacking, a lot of different tools like red light therapy, infrared, ozone therapy, gosh, what else? PEMF, lasers. There's so much out there again that isn't nature necessarily, but it's more on the crystal side of using crystal energy technology to biohack the body, in addition to using like a lot of healthy things. And so, well, I say healthy. It's all frequency. Again,
Yeah.
it's energy medicine, but it's just a different way of using it. So was able to reverse that, but that sent me down a lot more rabbit holes of like looking into this and that and this and that and getting certifications in pranic healing and Reiki and aromatherapy and iridology and ozone therapy. And I'm like, I feel like I'm an eternal student. I'm just like, I'm always reading like 6 books at a time. I'm just like, what about this? What about this? And
Yeah.
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 it's so exciting though, isn't it? Because there is just such a like, one modality leans into the other modality, and when you are inclusive with them, they just feed into each other so beautifully. And I love the reverse engineering, because that just speaks so much into really coming back. Okay, so what's the root cause of this? And where do we kind of rebirth that into a whole new space of expression, as opposed to like the band-aid approach that a lot of modalities offer. And bringing everything back to that crystal energy technology and the frequency. I mean, there's so much that these technologies have to offer, and if they're again interpreted in the right way and honored in the right way of what they have to share.
Yeah. And, they say that 86% of all physical issues are actually emotional. So there's this thing called conversion disorder where the body will start manifesting signals or symptoms because of something emotional that may have happened a year ago or 10 years ago or just 5 minutes ago, depending on. But that limbic system this is your frontal lobe, and behind that, your limbic system kind of is the librarian of emotions and the seat of all that. And as we're living life and going through whatever we're going through on the timeline, there's different things that cause us to take the information that we are bombarded with and decide if we're going to keep it or not. And we usually will defrag between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. if we're sleeping.
Yeah.
But all that information of, what color the tenant was at the bank whenever you went to the bank that day, and what music was playing in the background, and who you met at the grocery store, and what kind of shoes she wore. Like all of this is being recorded, the temperature outside, the heartbeat, like all of these things are going on simultaneously. And we're seeing, billboards and commercials and music and phone calls and texts. And so we don't need all this information, really. And so that limbic system between 3 and 5 will go like, yeah, let's just get rid of all this excess. It's not super necessary. We don't really need to know what color
Yes.
nail polish she had on that yesterday or whatever. But if there's something that's a little more traumatic, and or if it's something maybe an authoritative figure spoke something really negative or over that person, or if maybe it's a repetitive abuse, or there's certain things that have a little more stick.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that limbic system is like, we're not going to defrag right now. This is a little too much. And maybe we're just going to put this off in a body part for a while until she can calm down enough to kind of let this go. But right now is at the time. And it could sit there a week or 3 weeks or a month or a decade. But when it rubs up against something similar again, then it starts showing signals in that area. Now, like you mentioned, you can band-aid that stuff. If you have a car that's blinking and given a light and saying, oh, well, problems, 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 and you go bring it to a mechanic and they're like, oh, you know what, let's just undo that light. Let's take out that sound. We don't want to annoy you with all this mess. Like, you're good. We're just going to unplug that. Yeah. You're going to drive down the road and eventually the car is probably going to explode, or you're going to have a bigger signal, right? And that's how we are. If we don't deal with those little signals, then we end up dealing with bigger signals. And I'm so good at like ignoring the little signals. I'm getting better at being very highly aware of all those little voices, but sometimes it's like, no, I want to do this. No, I'd rather do that. And then we just kind of pretend they're not there. But when we pay attention and we seek ye first the kingdom, and then all these things will be added unto you. There's a scripture that says, seek ye first the kingdom, and then it doesn't say those things will be added unto you once, there's an order here. And where is the kingdom? The kingdom is in here. So as we listen to those voices, pull up that Kleenex, all these things will be added and things start to make sense. And honestly, sometimes we hear the rest of the story and we realize, oh, that's why I got rid of that girl, or that girl quit on me, or that person came in my life, or that song played on right then and it spoke the answer to the question that I had in my mind, or the commercial came on and someone spoke and finished my thought process and gave me, you know what I mean? Like, there's all these signs when we believe and we agree that signs just happen and that's a part of our life. Then we expect that, then we start getting clarity and we start seeing a little bit more about why the path is going that direction.
So beautiful and so powerful. And look, what we've been doing this podcast now for a couple of years, and there's been a real, if we take the human out of the picture and just look at like the blueprint, we've had like 95% of our guests have all come up with something happening in their body that shook them so much that they've woken up. They've had to go, okay, I need to look in and work out, why am I creating this? Why is this happening for me? And it's usually from something that's happened in the past where they've suppressed it and they haven't dealt with it at the time, or it's come up in little ways, but they've avoided looking at it, because the body will never lie. The body will always tell us. And it comes to a point where it'll explode.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes it's that thing of being forced to stop, because as you said, around the limbic system and the defrag, if we never stop the busyness, I mean, it's just must be a crazy land in there sometimes, like, and how much capacity has the body got to hold all of that? There's a limitation there.
Yeah, one of my mentors always said that revelation comes from rest. And when we get quiet, I mean, because how do you hear if you just don't even, if you got so much noise going on and chatter, it's really important for me, it's important for me to schedule time, because I will book, and I have a tendency to just think, oh my gosh, the phone's ringing, I should answer it, or this person's texting, I better answer back, or especially being in service, and I'm sure you guys have your version where it's like, a patient needs a question or what, and it's just so easy to just fall into constantly serving and never really taking that time to just be like, you know what, I'm going to be a human right now and not a doctor, or I'm going to be a wife right now, or I'm going to be a mom right now, or, and just having some boundaries there to, or I'm just going to be a person right now and I'm not going to be a wife or a mom or anything. I'm just going to sit on the beach and read a book and be quiet and listen to the waves and, but I have to schedule it for me because otherwise my schedule kind of creates itself into this other
Yeah.
thing. And I'm like, no, big X on this day, big X on that day, big X over here, or I'm going somewhere fun this weekend, or, something very on purpose. I have to be a lot more aware because all the times that I ended up getting ill through life, except for maybe that first time with my hearing, I could say it was me getting extremely out of balance and just like working 120 hours a week, being on 6 planes a week, and just like pushing, 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 never feeling like it was ever enough, and thinking, oh my God, there's so much more to go and so many people that need me. And what an illusion that is. It's just like, you know what? I'm just going to trust that God is taking care of everybody and I'm okay. And I don't have to be the person in charge of everything and everybody. And whew.
Ah,
Yeah.
and there's so much opportunity in those moments. We don't, we there's this weird thought that we have, that, the do is getting shit done, and this and that and this and that. And then over here meditating, well, you're not really doing much, but it's like, oh my God, so much is happening in those moments of stillness and of, resting. When you're truly deep resting, that there's so much occurring, there's so much happening in those moments that we need to actually allow them in. Yeah.
Absolutely. I like the word allow. Just allow.
There's only so much essential oil that you can kind of tip on yourself, to take the stuff away. It's just, got to be other elements that we need to add.
I want to ask you a question because I feel like you know the answer to this. Because what is it that's in us that what do you think drives us to just keep doing and doing and doing? Like back at the beginning of when we were talking into this space of keeping on going and not stopping and not filling our cups. What do you think is the human factor or the driver of that?
To get out of balance, you're saying?
Yeah, because it's almost like we
Oh.
it in some way, don't we? Like, some, yeah.
It's definitely a program. I believe it's a performance program
Yeah.
where maybe we were taught somewhere that if we perform in a certain way, then we're praised, or if we work hard, we're praised, or we get a trophy, or I mean, everyone gets a trophy now, but I'm just saying, when I grew up, there was a lot of push for like just excellence. And I know with my dad being in the military, it was like, 5 o'clock in the morning, I was up with, even though it was 40 degrees and we were running, and I was like 10 years old. And, there was a lot of expectation. Um, and, being on time. And I remember bargaining with my father one time because he was like, I wanted to go outside and play back when we did go outside and play
Yes.
until like dark.
Yes.
And and I was like, oh, my friends are playing kickball and doing whatever. And he was like, well, you're supposed to clean your room. You said you would. And I'm like, I promise I'll do it before I go to bed, before, the night is over, if you just let me go out and hang out with So we made an agreement. And I remember I did all the things, came back, forgot about it, had dinner, whatever, went to bed. And it was like 2 minutes to midnight, and my dad pops in and he's like, you got 2 minutes till this day is over and your room is not cleaned. And I mean, I look back and probably someone would think that's child abuse these days. But for me, right, but for me that was very much a learning conditioning thing of, my word and my agreements are powerful, and I don't need a contract and lawyers just to force someone to do, or threats. It's because my word means something. And so yeah, I think there's a lot to the drive of going back to your question, I know that's sort of something different, but I think being praised by my dad and just being accepted or loved, which I mean, he totally loves me unconditionally, but there's certain things that are kind of set up for competition and, winning at school and whatever, where we kind of maybe pick up those programs where it's like, okay, well, if I do more, maybe more people will love me. And when we can go in and be like, you know what, I am already loved. I was born in love. I am love. I create love. I enjoy love. I attract love. I manifest love. I radiate love. God is love. God is in me. God is in my cells. I was born for this. I was born to love. And nothing's going to separate me from love except for me when I don't love myself. That's the only way to separate from love.
Yeah.
My God, that's so beautiful.
That's just the most simplest,
Yeah.
most purest truth, isn't it?
It's so beautiful.
And hearing you say that just creates a
Ah.
beautiful vortex of energy that just softens into the space. Yeah.
Oh, and it's also like a remembering, I can feel my body tingling. It's like my body's, when you say that, my body's responding to it, because it's like, there's relief in it too, and it's like we hold ourselves to account in so many ways, and it's really just depleting us. When it is as simple as just seeing somebody and loving them, and your small and self more than anything, self. Yeah. So then we're able to give more of it. So thank you for that. That was a really beautiful, really beautiful block of information.
Yeah.
I will encourage anybody, if you have my book on audio, I have this whole reading about love that a lot of people have resonated with and had some extraordinary outcomes with just listening to that over and over of that portion of the book. And this is the book, The Science of Miracles, but I do have it on audio form, and I was never going to do like a audio book because I didn't like my voice, and I don't like listening to other people's books if they're not the ones who wrote it. There's something weird about like I don't want some dude, where to read a book that someone else wrote, because I don't feel like it resonates the same as the actual author who wrote it. But I didn't want to do the writing myself. I didn't want to be the speaker, because I don't listen to myself, and I never watch my podcasts or my interviews. And even when I was on TV, I was like, I don't want to see any of it. Like it just, I don't know what that is. But when I did the audio, and it got emotional. We were in the studio, and um, it was pretty powerful, and to the point where I was like listening back. But the guy who was there doing the sound for me, he had a pretty big encounter after that part of the session. And he was like, I just want to let you know, like, I didn't even want to come here tonight, and I just thought, oh, this is let's just get the time going. And my dad was like, what are you doing tonight? I'm like, oh, I got this lady coming, I got to do this recording. And he was just tears coming down, and he was like, I was on the verge of quitting my marriage tonight, and I just lost a friend, and blah blah blah. And like, I just feel completely different, like when you were saying all the things, like I just felt like vibed up. And I'm like literally gonna go home, and I'm gonna let my wife listen to this and read your book. And and they're still together, like, and just to see, like, wow, if it was just for him, that's cool.
Yeah.
I love your voice, I must say.
Yeah.
I love it. I've just got a beautiful timbre of resonancy in it, and neither of us, we love audiobooks, but who reads them is such a big dynamic.
And it's just literally started
to rain.
Rain here.
But
it's literally what?
It's literally just started pouring with rain here. The heavens have opened.
Yeah.
I love that.
But I want to say, with the podcast journey and the speaking journey, like we always joke with our microphones and things that Jo has great projection with her voice, and for me it's been a lesson in speaking louder, or just feeling okay with my own voice as well. And I just feel like there is no, again, mistake in the calling that brings us to do these things with sharing what we have to say, and even that beautiful connection you had in that moment of recording your book and affirming to you, the miracle that's in that for other people.
Absolutely.
It's you can't get anything more powerful than that. When one person, if it's only one person, that's what we often say, if it's only one person that hears this podcast, we're happy.
Yeah.
And it's done, and it's created magic for them. I think it doesn't matter how we sound to ourselves, it's what we have to say. And sometimes there's a lesson in that, isn't it? Always for our own self-love journey in our own heart. Yeah.
You just never know, you don't know why we're doing what you're doing. And it's just interesting how, one step at a time and one word at a time. And when, even our connection and meeting, it's like, how did this happen? We just created this cool connection and now we have this, it's like all these fun little interwoven things for this beautiful painting, this gorgeous thing. Yeah.
A tapestry, a painting.
Yeah,
the color,
like
thread.
A spider web, like a big spider web where we're all connected and we're all doing these wonderful things and we're all kind of vibrating and giving each other energy, and it's so beautiful. We're all so very similar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So beautiful.
Some of the things you've dropped into the conversation so far, one of our questions is, we have noticed a big shift in awareness in the world around self-worth and feelings of self-value. How does this energy sit with you in your life and awakenings? And you kind of shared that then just about the audiobook, but also some of the things you just mentioned around the programming and the performance programs and the God voice that isn't the God voice. How do you feel those things kind of interact together with our journey around self-worth and self-love and discovering who we are and what's in the hologram?
Yeah, well, I can share a situation where I had this really bad trail of picking, or I didn't even know I was creating really bad partnership. Just like and it wasn't until I was sick, really bad sick with, I don't like saying the word, but in 2016, and they had told me I wouldn't be here anymore and all these terrible things. But I started working with Bob Stevens, who's now passed. And he one day was just talking to me and he was like, you know, I was trying to clear because I knew I wasn't going to be here much longer. And I remember when I got the diagnosis, the first thing I thought about was like my first love, which was really weird because I was married at the time. We were going through a divorce, or actually, it was about a month after I was diagnosed that my partner at the time just basically left. Or maybe I just came up higher in frequency and he couldn't, whatever. But what's interesting is a couple of things happened is I reached out to my mentor and I was like, hey, um, what is this? Like, how do I clear this? Because I didn't want it to show up in my kids. I started seeing patterns in my oldest daughter where she was with someone and I was like, I know that whatever I do changes in my genealogy as well. So I was like, instead of forcing people on the outside, don't do this, it's like, let's just work inside and let energy take care of itself. So I reached out to him. I was like, what do I do? How do I switch this? He was like, well, have you ever had, like, well, actually, he said, well, is your dad a prick? That's what he told me. He asked me that. And I was like, no, actually, my dad's pretty awesome. And he was like, well, have you ever had a good relationship? And I was like, I had a really good one with my high school sweetheart. But I said, I've kind of just like graduated from like bigger asshole to bigger asshole all the way, more abusive, and on we go. And he's like, well, okay. So he was like, let's go back to where you started with the good one. Whatever happened with that? And I was like, well, we were supposed to get married and all these things were going on. And then like it kind of just wasn't sure. And we kept changing the wedding date. And the third time was like, what's going on here? And I was just like, and we kind of took a recess. And then one day I saw him out and I just had some words and things didn't go well. And I just took the ring off and threw it at him. And it was just like 25 years later, still don't know where the guy is, like was kind of it was back when, you didn't have Facebook, didn't have cell phones. If you had to call someone, you had to like figure out where they live and like drive to their house or have their landline. And so he said, I want you to go back and find that dude and like fix it. Just like apologize, do whatever you feel is in fix that so the energy, can go
Yeah.
clear. So I looked for him. I did all this. I had already tried that over the years anyway, not to like try to get back, but just to like clear the air, and found his brother, found his mom, was trying to connect, and it just wasn't going anywhere. I'd sent him a message and it wasn't coming back anywhere. So I contacted Bob again. I said, Bob, what do I do if like the person won't call me back, or like, I'm trying, and like, how do I clear this? And he was like, you don't have to physically like talk to him, like just do it energetically. Like, what do you mean you're trying to find him and get a private detective and blah blah blah? I was like, what? And he's like, just say whatever you're going to say energetically, as if he was standing in front of you. Everything is energy, sweetheart. Or he called me Angel. And I was like, man, I wish I would have known that a week ago. But so I was like walking around, my neighborhood, middle of the night, pretending he was walking with me, said all the things I would have said, that was dumb. And I don't know why I said that. And I hope you can forgive me, and, blah, 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 blah. And laid down in my driveway and I looked up at the stars and I was like, okay, God, please clear that for me and my generations to come. And I'm not kidding you. My phone was laying on the ground next to me and it starts ringing. It's like 11 o'clock at night. And I look and it's him. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is crazy. And he was like, okay, I'll meet with you. And so we ended up meeting and different things happened. And what I realized is when about a month later we reconnected, over time we got back together. I did get to clear what was going on with my health, and that's a whole different topic. But when I found out that I was clear, I went to the doctor and I said, um, I was in the process of kept having a reoccurring dream to take the wedding ring off. And I was very legalistic. The papers weren't signed. It had been way past the time for anything legally to be done, but they weren't signing. And I was just like, oh my gosh, can I take the ring off? And kept getting that. And it was like against my insides to be like, oh, I don't want to lie. I don't want to look like I'm lying, but I don't. So I asked the doctor, like, can you test me to see other things, and the nurse came in and was like, can you test to see if I could take the ring off? I keep having this dream about taking the ring off. And she was like, yeah, sure. So she muscle tested me and she's like, yeah, it says you can take the ring off. And I'm like, you know what? Can you ask if I'm still married to that person? And they were like, sure. So she does, and it comes back no. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And then I was like, can you test to see if I was ever married to that person? And it came back no. And I was like, okay, that's 7 years of like trauma to stay in a situation that I stayed in just because I felt like I was supposed to, and I wasn't even married. So then I was like, please tell me, God, I'm not married to my first husband, because that was worse.
Yes.
And it comes back no. And I'm like, what? Was I ever married? Yes. I'm like, what the heck? So I'm like, okay, when was I married? And it comes back November 6th, 1987.
Oh, oh,
And I was like, what in the world is that? Like, I don't even know what that is, right? So fast forward, my first love, who had just come back in my life for that one exchange where we just said whatever, and then we went our separate ways, he contacts me again and is like, hey, I don't know how you're doing. Just wondering how things are going. Would you want to meet up? I can make you dinner, whatever. Go over there. And he has this big football bag. Um, American football because he was like American football captain. He had like every letter I ever wrote to him, cassette tapes, he had poems, he had matching shirt and jewelry. He had kept everything from all of our stuff, pictures of him and my grandparents, my dad, like all the stuff from the time we were together for 5 years. And this calendar that he pulled out was a 3-year calendar. It was 87, 88, and 89. And it had January 2nd, his birthday circled, September 14th, my birthday circled for all 3 years, and November 7th, all the way on 3 years. And so I was like, what is the 7th? And he was like, you don't remember? And I was like, no, I don't remember. And he said, well, the 6th, you came over to my football game and you left me your phone number and everything. I called you, and then we had our first date on the 7th.
Oh, that's so
I'm
beautiful.
gonna cry.
And I was like, wait, what? And I didn't want to go, we're married, because I didn't want to scare him, but I was like, oh my God, somehow my body had registered that as a marriage, even though like nothing happened except for a kiss, and nothing happened really above and beyond that energetically, except for we were physically together, like, living day to day, but there was no sexual, there was no that kind of stuff. So it was like, well, what in the world is marriage? Like, and there was a part of me that was like super grieved because I kind of felt like I wasted 20 some years of like feeling like I was just in these places because I had to, because on paper, la la la. But there was another part of me that was like kind of relieved. But then there's another part that was like, wow, the reason why I constantly had liars and cheaters and adultery and abuse was because I didn't love me. I couldn't stand me. And that hate for myself was in the atmosphere. And so my first love couldn't even find me because there was so much like dissonance of hatred towards myself, and he's pure love. So he's like, where is she? Where is she? I'm sure she's like, can't even find you in this mess. But once I started really loving myself, taking care of myself, doing the things and not accepting certain things and being like, that's not going to be in my realm, he was not only able to find me, but also that time where I was with those other people, because I was, quote, married and not even knowing it, I was the one who was the cheater. I was the one who was the liar. Therefore, I was attracting liars and cheaters into my field to, I guess, get me to the point of saying, okay, there's something going on here. Thank you for the gift, even though I didn't think it was a gift at the time. Let's go back and see why I'm attracting this. And it caused me to really be more aware of like everything I'm doing now. It's like who I'm with, what I'm doing, why, like, and that self-love is, again, I am already loved. It's nothing having to do with performance. It's nothing having to do with what someone else thinks. Ugh, like I was born to love, you were born to love, we are born in love, no matter what the circumstances. Is God, who is love, is in every single cell. And when we remember that and allow it and walk in it and embody it, we get to radiate that. And then we get to get a match because we only get what we are. And so one of my mantras is I am love and I stay. I am love. I am already loved and I stay, meaning I'm not going to get out of this frequency. I'm going to stay. I'm going to choose love over and over and over again.
Just gonna let that resonate. Yeah, that is just the most beautiful love story of self, but also of like how the soul contracts that we have, or the soul connections that we have, that travel through all of our human experiences, and over such a long period of time, and just that beautiful. And I'm imagining that is an example of the reverse engineering as well, of going back through all of that, and through the process of that final sickness, diving into all the things, Oh, my heart is just like
Well,
expanding.
and love heals because I started reversing, and when we love ourselves and we put energy and attention to that, magic really does happen. Everything shifts.
Oh,
Everything shifts.
and that's
Yeah.
this is just what I want to talk about too, because we are coming up to the end, and I really want to phase it out on this beautiful note that we're on. Um, I wanted to ask you about miracles.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about
Science of miracles.
yeah, and also, and I know it relates back to everything we're just talking about right now in this moment, but um, for me personally, I feel like these synchronicities or these miracles, we can call them whatever we want to call them, are really, really happening at such a fast pace when if we're aware of them, if we're awake to them, if we're conscious of them.
It's a jet stream.
It's a jet stream, yeah, and they all link up. They all have purpose and meaning. Can you just share a little bit about your experience with miracles, or even for our listeners, how can they connect in? How can they create more? What is the trick of doing this?
Was the hear because I'm bringing the hearing in the throat, the surgery, and as a miracle. Was that your first experience as of a miracle, or conscious?
Gosh, we I think there's been a lot more than that. I think everything is a miracle when we have that perspective. Even like terrible things, like when I was sick and I got myself there, that was the biggest teacher for me in so many ways to really, I mean, look at all that shifted from that, me creating that for myself and then reversing it myself. So the good news is, or the bad news is I made that.
Yeah.
But the good news is I could switch it,
Yeah.
right? And we all have those ways where we can pivot and create something completely different. We're going to create either way. It's just a matter of, are you consciously creating something positive, or are you going to default be, in things that aren't serving you as well? But I I have a whole book on charts and graphs, and I talk about, there's a timeline here of echo waves and standing waves, and just how to do that creation process. I talk about the phantom effect and the blueprint on the Earth's energy field and like our biofield, and how we can have different electrons that are going in the positive and some of them are negative, and how they work to radiate and magnetize, and how to clear the ones that aren't supposed to be, in the realm at all, and that, or maybe they are, to just give us the gift of seeing the negative. So we have that polarization, because dark isn't bad if it can be a catalyst to learn something new or remember something better. But I go into energetic purgatory, and people who get stuck and they're like, why am I here? Like, how do I get out of this trauma loop? And how do I frequency hop out of this loop into a new timeline that's better? But all of this goes into different ways to apply these formulas where people can start having everyday reoccurrences of just like abundance, or maybe a check in the mail, or a new job, or a partnership, or whatever fun and excitement and miracles look like to you. Maybe that's getting a new car. I teach on outcome mapping and how to use your imagery and your imagination with the heart and with conscious language in your programming and your thought process, to really put out a different vibration into the field so you can collect something more positive. But yeah, I mean, this honestly, whether you get it physically or on audio, there's a lot of keys in there for people to start implementing that into your own life and seeing. And I love when people come back and go, this is the miracle that happened, or this is the other miracle that happened, and report back and let me know, because I'm constantly getting emails and texts and saying, oh my gosh, one example, this lady had said that she was really believing for her house note to be paid that month. And she was just doing all the things that are talked about in here. And she said that someone came and just knocked on the door and was like, hey, I'm just letting you know I have a check for blah, 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 blah. And it was with the exact sense and everything. And she was so happy. And I was just like, I'm really happy for you, but why didn't you ask for the whole mortgage to be paid off? Why didn't you just ask for this month? Like, I always say, people say go big or go home. I say stay home and go big. Like, why not? Like, it takes as much energy to make a big, miracle as it does to what we think is small. It's like energy is just energy, big and small. There is no big and small. It's just miracles.
I love this, and I love the
Yeah.
fact that and the understanding of how limiting our thoughts have been, like how the entrapment of limitation of how we've grown up, and that is what you're talking about right now. Is
And looping back to the self-worth
yeah,
and how much to ask for or not to ask for.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. People used to say, I used to say or hear, the sky is the limit. And I'm like, oh no, the sky is not the limit.
Absolutely not. Now we are coming to the end. I wanted to ask, is there anything you would like to share with our listeners? And we're going to put all of your beautiful books and cards and everything else that you have available in our show notes for all of our listeners. But is there anything
Yes.
yeah,
oh yes,
stunning. Yeah.
please just show us. Let's just talk a little around this just for a minute. Yeah, because this is what I love. Like you've spoken how you've worked in the mission and the and ministry. Sorry, and I just love how all encompassing your faith is, your spiritual teachings are. Like they're like we have like the Dolores Cannon books here.
Oh, I love her. She's great.
Yeah, but again, an example of how she turned her back on her passion, her joy. But you're all encompassing in this area of the crystals, the vibration, the essences, the technology. It's really making me so happy just to hear you speak in this space and what you share with people, because this is what it's really all about. There's why
with one way.
why block something and say that's wrong?
We can have it all.
Everything has the energy to do good if we allow it, doesn't it?
Yes.
Language in this space. So please just share a little bit around those beautiful cards, because they are divine.
Yes, and choosing to make things fun and easy, and choosing to make things, exciting and miraculous. And, just sometimes saying that out loud, can shift things pretty quickly too. Just like, you know what, this is fun and this is easy, and I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I remember, and being really clear on what it is, that we're creating, instead of just, like I said, defaulting and being like, well, we're not paying attention and we're just like, whatever. And then things just show up and we're like, wait, how did that get here? It's like, or blaming everybody and everything is like, oh, that happened because of that guy and this girl. It's like, no, why do you think you've had the same thing no matter what job you've had or what partner you've had? The qualifying, part is you are the common denominator in all of those scenarios. And so again, when we can change from the inside out, we're not only changing us, but we're changing every single partner that we've ever been with physically. We're changing all the children that we carried, because just in a twilight, we shift that you will get those phone calls from your kids and from whoever, and they're like popping up and having these entanglement miracles. Look, and you didn't even have to tell them about it or force anything. It's happening from long distance because you did the inner work, and all of our inner work changes our realm, which adds to the collective realm. And eventually we'll get to this tipping point on the earth where it's like, you know what, light is prevalent, and there's way more light than there's dark. And I just encourage you guys who are watching, if you are looking for hope and encouragement and for a remembrance of love, the book is called The Science of Miracles, Remembering the Frequency of Love. And when we remember that frequency and we tap into actual love and being love, embodying love, speaking love, thinking love, and loving ourselves, like you've talked so prevalently about throughout this, you will start to see miracles. You're already a miracle. You're a miracle in the waiting. And so it's yours. Just open up and let's do this. And definitely please report your miracles to me. I want to hear about them. I love getting feedback from everybody who's like, oh, I tried this and it worked. It's like, yay, let me know.
Yeah, Oh my
adds to the
goodness.
joy, and yeah, and just another smile that changes another ripple, another
Absolutely.
trajectory. Or yeah, that's, I just think we need to share our miracles. So thank you for sharing your miracles with us today, and your awakenings, and just your joy of the space that you're working in. It's
really beautiful.
It's incredible. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys. Thank you for what you're doing in your service and just having this platform. You know, we need all the light we can get. Oh my gosh. So every little bit you guys send, thank you from my whole heart.
Love you. Thank you.